But first, I want to show you some truth bombs from Greta Thunberg. Yep, you heard that right. I reckon Greta Thunberg has given us a reality check, although probably not in the way she intended. Now, Thunberg worries me a bit, a lot, in fact. I worry about her well-being. She's intense and angry and anxious and perhaps ought to get out and enjoy nature rather than scream blue murder about the future of the planet. And I'm deeply worried that political leaders and activists either use her to push their cause or, even worse, listen to her as some kind of sage rather than deal with expert advice on how to manage energy and climate issues rationally and sensibly. But despite all this, I think Thunberg deserves praise for elements of her speech to a youth climate conference in Milan yesterday. Why? Well, because she revealed the truth. She called out global leaders, firstly by mocking their meaningless slogans.
Fighting climate change calls for innovation, cooperation and willpower to make the changes that the world needs. We need to walk the talk. If we do this together, we can do this. When I say climate change, what do you think of? I think of jobs. Green jobs. Green jobs.
Yeah, mocking the cliches, green jobs. She could have been echoing Anthony Albanese there, or Adam Bandt, Matt Keane, Malcolm Turnbull. Even the climate zealots realise all that stuff about green jobs is just spin, as is the current obsession with net zero.
This is not about some expensive, politically correct green act of bunny hugging or blah, blah, blah. Build back better, blah, blah, blah. Green economy, blah, blah, blah. Net zero by 2050, blah, blah, blah. Net zero by 2050, blah, blah, blah. Net zero, blah, blah, blah. Climate neutral, blah, blah, blah.
Yep, she's mocking them. The net zero talk is meaningless without a serious plan. Thunberg sees that from the perspective of someone demanding more action, whereas I would say it's all spin to hide the fact that it simply can't be done, at least not the way they're pretending it'll be done with renewable energy. They could perhaps do it with nuclear energy. So while I disagree with Thunberg and her ilk, she did deliver some truth bombs, including this one, which reveals that the radical left want to use climate policy to do much more than protect the environment.
And the climate crisis is, of course, only a symptom of a much larger crisis. A sustainability crisis, a social crisis, a crisis of inequality that dates back to colonialism and beyond. A crisis based on the idea that some people are worth more than others and therefore have the right to exploit and steal other people's land and resources. And it is very naive to believe that we can solve this crisis without confronting the roots of it.
Yep, radical left theory, post-colonialism, post-modernism, socialism, the Great Reset, call it what you will, it's far more than tree-hugging environmental policy. In fact, listen to Thunberg and it starts to sound like a revolution that has no regard for our economy or our existing way of life.
But, of course, we can still turn this around. It is entirely possible. It will take drastic annual emission cuts unlike anything the world has ever seen. And as we don't have the technological solutions that alone can deliver anything close to that, that means we will have to change. We can no longer let the people in power decide what is politically possible or not. We can no longer let the people in power decide what hope is. Hope is not passive. Hope is not blah, blah, blah. Hope is telling the truth. Hope is taking action. And hope always comes from the people.
Yep, thank you to Comrade Greta Thunberg. Thank you for drawing our attention to what the mainstream left want to hide, that climate activists are driving a radical socialist agenda to reshape the world. And net zero is merely their latest slogan. Now, this does not mean that all climate policies are part of some plot or that we shouldn't be very serious about caring for our environment. but it does mean we need to be very clear about the activist agenda and wary of being sucked down a dangerous path by the radical leftists of the Greens and the socialist left of the Labor Party. Any politician who delivers policies that make the likes of Greta Thunberg happy is a politician that should frighten mainstream voters.